Welcome to the Let's Play Music podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Solberg, creator and founder of the Let's Play Music curriculum. We're glad you're tuning in. Today in our studio, we have with us Topher Keene.
It's great to be here, Shelley.
So glad to have you. Topher Keene is a speaker, author, coach, educator, musician, and mentor, working to help the young and the young at heart to build self-confidence and express themselves through vocal music. He really is quite an expert at singing and allowing expression through music. Some of his accolades include he was a quarterfinalist in the Grammy Music Educator of the Year, and that was for 2018, I believe. Is that right?
Yep.
That's amazing. Awesome. He's currently the artistic director of the Arizona Girl Choir, and he also was previously the associate artistic director of the Phoenix Boys Choir. He's also the director of several state and local choirs, as well as the former president of the Arizona Kodai Teacher Society, and was the outstanding emerging educator from the Organization of American Kodai Educators. So many wonderful distinguishing awards and honors, and currently is running an active private studio of voice students. So yes, you do have personal access to Topher,
Yes.
which is an amazing thing. So Topher, we're super excited to talk to you today about the subject of singing in tune.
Wonderful.
And you and I have talked a lot about this before. Our career paths intersected about 5 years ago when Topher heard a podcast on Let's Play Music.
Exactly.
And
it was
then,
actually the descending Doe a Deer lyrics that you had created
Yes.
for Let's Play that really stuck out to me. I said, this is brilliant. I need to meet this woman.
that was it. The
Yep,
Do
that was
Re
it.
Mi that I wrote for, I finish up Rodgers and Hammerstein, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad it caught your ear. And from then, we've just had multiple opportunities to support one another in our causes. We are both incredibly passionate in what we do. And I feel like Topher has an exceptional hold on teaching people to sing in tune, and he really understands how it's done. So tell us, what is singing in tune?
So that's a big question, Shelley. And you're right to start there because the definition really determines how you're going to approach this.
Right.
So I'd like to start with a sort of mini talk about anatomy. If we can go into
Sure,
how
sure.
the voice actually works and how
Okay.
the brain perceives music, then I think it's going to make a lot more sense how I talk about singing in tune.
Awesome.
So most of us have heard the word vocal cords before, but not all of us know how our body actually produces music. So if you just take your hands, whether you're at home or here with me, Miss Shelley, go ahead and place your hand gently on your throat and swallow. And then just hum a little bit. You'll feel that buzz in your throat. You'll feel that little bump that moves around. That's your Adam's apple, your voice box. If you're female, your Eve's pomegranate, if you prefer. So that is your voice box, your larynx, your vocal cords, your vocal folds. There's a lot of words for it, but that's where your voice comes from. There's a lot of muscles and bones that function in there. You don't need to know all the fancy biology names. But what you need to know is there's a couple of little muscles in there that we call vocal folds because they're flaps of muscle. They're not really like strings. So I don't like the word vocal cords because they don't buzz like a guitar string. They are flaps of muscle that come together to vibrate to produce your voice. So your voice is really a function of two things. It's pressure in those vocal folds that holds them together, and it's air pressure from underneath in your lungs.
Right.
So that's where so many singing teachers and musicians will focus on breath support, on singing from the diaphragm, on all of those terms, because the air pressure, the stronger that is, the less pressure there needs to be on the chords to produce the pitch.
Right.
So when the chords come together, they chop up that air to produce a pitch. And I've got my trusty tuning fork over here, so
Of course.
when I sing that note, my vocal folds are flapping about 220 times per second. And when I sing flat, they're a little bit slower. When I sing sharp, they're a little bit faster. What my brain is doing when I hit that tuning fork is I'm hearing a frequency of pitch going 220 times a second. I'm pressing the folds together and increasing my air support until they'll flap exactly 220 times per second.
It's really amazing.
It's really amazing because you don't actually need to know what those numbers are. That's what's amazing. Is your brain just does the math without it. So Shelley, if I asked you to sing that same note but in your octave, what you did is you ran a little algorithm inside your brain that said octave. And what octave means is double that frequency and then produce a similar pitch. So instead of 220, you produced 440. Exactly. And if I wanted to produce the octave below, 110, my brain is just doing that math to double up that number. So when we think of the word octave, we as music educators or as casual parents who are connected to the music community, we know that an octave is a note with the same note name. So an A natural and another A natural, that's an octave. Or it might have the same solfege syllable. Do. Beautiful, and that's 2 octaves. And so it might have the same solfege syllable, and those notes sound the same when they're sung together. So if we both sing together, the notes sound pretty similar. So your note's higher than mine, but they sound like the same note. Now what's actually happening is your frequency is exactly double mine. So if you looked at that sound wave, it'd be bouncing up twice for every time mine bounces once. And if our notes aren't in tune, then they don't line up as perfectly. So can you sing that same note, and then I'm going to sing a different note?
Sure.
You can hear that those frequencies conflict a lot more than the beautiful ones that come together perfectly. So when we talk about singing in tune, what we're doing is we're matching our frequencies exactly. So if I find a note that's more comfy for me, I'm not as comfy with a high A as you are because I'm a male singer, so that's a little bit out of my range. So I'm going to sing an F, which will be comfy for both of us. So now our frequencies are exactly the same. They're not displaced by that octave.
Right.
And so when we sing in tune, they're exactly the same and they line up perfectly, which means our vocal folds are matching up perfectly every second with the same exact frequency and not off by even the slightest. If we're off by the slightest, it would sound like this. It's so close, but so far away. That's the thing. So when we sing in tune, we're matching that frequency perfectly. We're really doing complex calculus inside our brain, especially if we're going to then try and sing a whole song where the notes move around. Every note that changes that frequency, which changes the tension in the vocal folds, changes the air pressure. There's a lot going on in the body.
Right.
So one of the things that actually makes me very secure in my faith is how much I know about music, because it is impossible for us to work this all out on our own.
Yes.
And it's not possible to me that just evolution could explain why we can sing so beautifully. Because
it is a miracle.
It's not really that helpful if you're out in the jungle trying to fight off a tiger or to, gather food for survival. Like, why is singing beautifully and in tune with others something that's going to help with that? It is this beautiful gift that we get, that we can produce music with these vocal folds that were made to scream in warning from predators coming after us.
Yes.
But we can also make this beautiful music together.
Yes.
And so it's such a complicated thing, but it is something that is not it is not magic. It's not something that can't be trained. It's physical muscles, and it's response to biology and to mathematics and to anatomy. These are things that can be trained. So the first thing I really want everyone to know is that everyone can, barring a severe mental or physical disability, everyone can learn to sing in tune. It's a learnable skill that most of us learn as children.
Yes.
But one of the challenges is that in the modern world, most children are not exposed to very much music. Now, a lot of times they're exposed to music casually as consumers. It's around them. It's playing on TV and in movies and in the car, on the radio, but it's not interactive. And that's something we've really learned from linguistics, that children who develop very strong vocabularies and develop high levels of reading fluency are spoken to a lot and spoken with a lot.
Correct.
And not just around a lot of words. Just listening to CDs or watching movies or watching TV shows is not the same as interacting with an actual human being, an actual adult. And that is true from linguistics, from adopting words and adopting language. It's also true for music, from adopting the ability to engage with music instead of just listening to it passively. Now the passive listening is very important too.
Yes.
It's very foundational to hear a lot of different kinds of music. But the most important thing is that singing with the parent. One of the things that I learned from Dr. Edwin Gordon, who's one of the bigger researchers in the field, is that one of the only things associated with long-term musical aptitude is the earliest age at which a child repeats a melody.
Correct.
And can accurately repeat a melody back to their parent. Now, you got to imagine, if you're never singing any melodies at your child, they're not going to repeat those melodies very early.
Right.
And the earlier you do that, the stronger those neurons form. Now, you can definitely learn it as an adult too. I have not found, in my experience, any people who could not match pitch, who I could not teach to match pitch after several months or years of training. Now,
Wonderful.
So
it's great to hear, Topher.
I have met people who can't sing in tune, who can't match pitch well. I've never met someone like that and said, how many years of lessons have you taken? And they say, oh, 4 or 5 years of lessons. And I just can't get it. These are people who say, well, I never took any practical, any formal music training because I just didn't think I had the aptitude.
Right.
So I think that it can be taught, it can be learned. You can go very deep into the mathematics and the biology of it. But at the end of the day, just know that it's not something that's magic. It's not something reserved for those born with a musical gene. But can you learn to sing comfortably and beautifully with your friends and with your children? Certainly, everyone can learn that.
That's so great. And really, it's a part of being human.
Very much so.
Being able to sing and being able to sing with children and sing with family, friends, peers. It's I love that you use the term interactive because music does need to be interactive.
Very much so.
And in order for people to feel comfortable being interactive, they need to feel like they can sing in tune or match pitch. Yes. So how would you say you recognize singing in tune?
So I had a student once, very, very sweet girl in high school who was super passionate about music. And for those out there listening who are choir directors or who ever run a group ensemble, you'll know that often, ironically enough, our most passionate and most engaged singers are not the ones gifted with the most natural talent.
So true.
And so sometimes you get a singer who's very passionate, who works very hard and sings very loud, enthusiastically, but just can't quite get everything in tune.
Right.
And so this student really, really loved to sing and was in choir with me regularly and asked about private coaching in order to help her improve those skills. And so I worked with her for several months and really struggled. We were able to sometimes get in tune with the piano, sometimes do some exercise, but a lot of times it was all over the map. The intonation was not strong. It took a while. And one lesson, it really clicked for me. We're working on an exercise that I can show you real quick. So let's just take that same comfortable F that we took, Miss Shelley.
All right.
And just sing an ah for me. Beautiful. And so I'm going to model, thank you very much. And I'm going to model the out of tune singer. And what I want you to do is show me with your hand how I need to move my pitch to match with you. Okay. So go ahead and sing that note again. There we go. So when we find that place where we're together, we would describe it as maybe a warm feeling, an open feeling, some vibration that matches up. There's less conflict, less buzz. There's a lot of words you could use. So I asked my student to describe to me, what does it feel like when we're singing that same note? And she goes, oh, you mean that kind of like wobbly, like sort of buzzy feeling when the note's coming? Yeah, those are the words she used. And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, that's singing out of tune, right? So she had associated singing out of tune with the feeling of singing in tune. So she was chasing away from that feeling because she had lost the sound of her voice. So again, if we sing that note together, we lose a little bit of our own voice.
So very
mix.
synchronous.
Yeah, it's so together that you lose a sense of, you don't hear your voice as well. When our voices are off a little bit, it's much easier to hear your own voice.
I heard you.
When it's exactly, you can hear both voices distinctly. And when we're in choir, we talk about paying careful attention to your voice and hearing your neighbors. And it's much easier to do that when you're not singing perfectly in tune with them. If you sing perfectly in tune, you almost lose your own voice. So what I found with that,
which is the goal in choir singing.
Exactly. And they need to know that. It needs to be reinforced constantly. So what I found is some students, our focus for today is on those students who struggle to sing in tune because of actual intonation problems and ear training problems. Right. But so the first step I find when I'm working with a coach who's trying to learn to teach to sing in tune, or a parent who's struggling with their child who's learning to sing in tune, the first step is to make sure it's not a technical issue, because most of the time when they sing out of tune, it's not actually poor intonation and poor ear training. It's a technical issue. Okay. So there's three things that I'm seeing there. The first thing, before the three technical issues, the first thing is to make sure they know what singing in tune feels like, and that they don't think it means singing out of tune.
So they do need to define it and recognize
exactly.
it.
And so I find it's more effective to go to their words, the singer's words, to describe that feeling. So you start from a pitch that's comfortable for them, and then you match their pitch, because that, as long as they can hold a pitch relatively consistently, if you ask them to hold a note and they go then we need to work on
backwards.
You got to go backwards. The simplest step is just hold a note. And it may not sound good. That's okay. Then you match that note so that they can see what it feels like when the two notes match. And then you ask them in their own words to describe that. So Shelley, if we sang that same F again. What do you feel? What words would you use to describe when I'm singing the same note as you? How does it feel in your body?
It feels unified. I do feel kind of buzzy.
Buzzy?
I feel sort of a maybe light ethereal quality of the matchiness of our tones and pitches.
So all of those words are great words and words that I've heard from other singers before. And there's lots of other terms.
Matchiness, you've heard that?
Yeah,
You like that?
Warm, open, wobbly.
Yes.
I heard one kid who said that it felt like a unicorn horn was coming out of
Great.
their head. And
I
were
love
matching.
that.
You
Yeah.
know, there's the colors that may be described. Oh, it felt shiny. It felt sparkly, glittery. You know, so find the words that work for them and then use those words and say, okay, we're looking for that glittery feeling, that warm feeling, that unified feeling like Shelley has. So that once they have that feeling, then we want to make sure. We want to make sure that they know what that feeling is and they're seeking it out. Then the technical issues can come into play because they're trying to hear themselves. So the first one that I find is breath support. If there's not enough breath, they can't get to the pitch. So again, if you can sing that F for me. If I don't have enough air, I can't get up there. If I take a better breath and support from the diaphragm, it's there. So you teach breath support and make sure the breath is not the issue. Now, a second issue is vowel formation. So can you sing that same ah for me again? Sounds out of tune, right? Not out of tune. I was singing the same note as you, but our vowels were out of tune, which if we wanted to go deeper into acoustics, we can talk about how vowels are timbre, which is made up of overtones, and the overtones are out of tune when our vowels are out of tune.
Right.
So the fundamental pitch that we're singing is not actually out of tune. It's the overtones that are out of tune. But you at home, you don't need to know that. If you want to go deeper into it, there's lots of deep acoustical
Don't
science.
try this at home.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to go into the overtones, though, it's a fun little rabbit hole. But basically, when your vowels don't match, it sounds out of tune, even though you're singing the same note.
Yes.
So if we can do that again, I'm going to modify my vowel to make it in tune without changing my pitch.
Great.
So go ahead and do that again. When I find your vowel, it sounds in tune, even though I didn't have to move the pitch at all. So the last one is registration, and that's our chest voice, head voice terminology that many would be familiar with. That comes down to muscular function. So there are two muscles inside the cords. You don't need to know the names, but they're cricothyroid and thyroarytenoid. You don't need to know that. But just know that there's two different muscles. And if one muscle is functioning over the other, then you're not going to necessarily get that same beautiful blend in tone. And it may sound out of tune. It may actually be out of tune. The note may be too low because they're stuck in the chest voice and not accessing the head voice.
Right.
So again, if we sing that same note.
Right.
I'm trying to shout up there in a pure chest voice. It won't come out. If I flip into my light, floaty head voice, it'll come out more beautifully. And now I can get up there. So if your singer can't access that light, floaty head voice, they need to be taught to do that.
That is a biological thing then.
It is. It is. It's an anatomical thing. And it's not just an out of tune thing. So we think, I need to teach them to sing in tune. Like, no, you need to teach them to sing in their head voice.
Right.
Or you need to teach
Flip
them
over.
to sing better vowels. Or you need to teach them to sing with better breath support. All of those might be the issue. And I encourage teachers especially, but also parents who are working with children who struggle to sing in tune, I encourage you to look at those three technical aspects first before immediately diagnosing an intonation problem. Because it may be an intonation problem, but an intonation problem is months of work generally, at least, if not years, to really overcome. It's very difficult to train the ear. And so I'm happy to talk about my process for that. But the first step is determine you actually need that because you might not. It's a radical thing.
It could be anatomical.
It could be anatomical. It's like knee surgery. You know, some people need knee surgery, certainly. But some people could just have a little bit of physical therapy, learn to walk a little bit better, do a little bit of exercise, and their knee pain would go away.
Sure.
Maybe not jump to surgery as the first solution.
Right.
And systematic intonation, in-tune singing training is really a large-scale intervention. It takes a lot of work. If somebody's actually kind of, you know, I don't like the words, but monotone, tone deaf, you know, although I don't like those labels.
Sometimes they're self-diagnosed.
Exactly.
They come to you saying that, and your job is to say, no, you're not.
No, you're not. Exactly. Because it's very, very small percentage of the population that is. And there's some research to say that there are some people just biologically, anatomically, some sort of disorder with the hearing process or with coordination in the vocal folds, that there is some sort of tone deafness. I've not encountered that. So what I've said every time, I've done this talk, 1,000 times at state and local and national conferences. And every time I say, if you have a singer who you think actually cannot sing in tune, completely tone deaf. Send them to me and I will pay you hundreds of dollars, please. And every time people laugh and nobody takes me up on it. I'm happy.
I've heard you say this at several conferences.
On this podcast right now, I will happily pay you $200 if you can find somebody and put them on a Skype call with me who actually cannot sing in tune and is willing to do some work. You have to work for a few weeks or a few months to prove that you can't learn it. But I would love to prove that you can learn it. Because
I love this.
I've had dozens of students who are quote unquote tone deaf, and after weeks or months of training, they overcome it. And so
Awesome.
I've seen it with children, I've seen it with teenagers, I've seen it with adults, I've seen it with senior citizens at the end of their life who'd never sung in tune for 70 years.
Wow, what a gift.
And still, it's a beautiful gift. And it's something that, my philosophy of music education is that most of my students will not be professional musicians. My goal is that every singer that works with me feels comfortable singing Christmas carols with their family and singing lullabies to their grandkids when they're 8.
It's the human interaction we were talking about a moment ago.
And it's vocal health so that they maintain their instrument through their life and don't lose access to it.
Right.
But it's not the professional training stuff. I have students who go down that route and I'm happy to work that with them, but it's such a small percentage that I think as educators, we should treat each student as if they are going to just be interacting musically with their family.
Right.
And give them the skills, the beautiful folk music, the hymns, the lullabies, the carols, the things they can sing with their family comfortably, and give them the confidence to use their voice comfortably, rather than putting such high standards on everything we sing that has to be so polished and so over-rehearsed and so professional all the time. Casual, comfortable singing is the core of it, and that starts by teaching every singer to sing in tune, because that's the biggest fear of everyone, is that they're singing
That's
out
the
of tune.
fear.
It's the fear.
Right. And you're sounding a lot like Kodai here, Topher.
Yes. I pulled a lot from Zoltan. And so I did 4 years of Kodai training through the New England Conservatory and served on the board both at the state and the national level. And so the core of Kodai is a very interesting philosophy to go into as a music educator. The core that really resonated with me is that it is based on folk music. It is music for everyone. And the idea, one of Kodai's quotes that stuck most positively for me was that the music education of the child starts 9 months before the birth of the mother.
Yes.
So when the mother is in the womb, that is when you are beginning the music education of her future children. Because that musical exposure as children is the foundation we use to build all musical skill.
Right.
So singing with our children, singing to our children, responding with our children, and having lots of music in the household is the best thing you can do to build up that musical skill for a child. We can get into the technical details of what the curriculum looks like and what sort of songs to pick and what sort of intervals are better, and all of that stuff is valid, but at the end of the day, musical interaction with the child is the core, especially at those young ages. I mean, when you're talking before 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, it's mostly just singing at your child and getting them to sing along with you, and also just responding to them and giving them the sense of self-evaluation. So there's something that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, but it's the response to babbling that I really focus on. And identical response to babbling. So when your baby goes, you go, in the same pitch range, the same timbre, the same tone, so they can get used to hearing their sounds reflected back at them.
Right. How else, and I know you've been talking about just singing at your child, but how about parents who don't feel like they have the tools? They don't feel like they have how do I interact with my child musically? Because you and I will both agree, and we may talk about this a little later, that teaching an infant or toddler to sing in tune is far easier than teaching a teenager to sing in tune.
Yes.
So let's talk about this infant-toddler relationship.
So I would extrapolate. I'm sorry, I would expand on that idea a little bit and just say that most people learn to sing in tune as children. The foundation of it for me with children and with adults as they go through adolescence is to start from their sounds, because that is the easier thing. The idea was cut it in half. And the idea was when your student can't do something that you want them to do, the gap between what they can do, what you know they know, and what you want them to do, what you want them to know, that gap is too big. So cut that gap in half. So if I'm saying, here's my note, match my note, that may be, go ahead. Yeah, there we go. It may be too big of a gap for that student, and so it's easier for them to just produce a note on their own, and then for me to match their note, and get that feeling. So that's where I would start with young children. Like I said, it's infants, toddlers, pre-verbal. It's really all about sing at them, even if you're singing a little bit out of tune, if you're not confident in your voice. Just the fact that sound is coming out of your mouth toward them and in their ear,
and that you're intentionally mimicking their sound.
Yes, that's huge. And so you want to mimic every sound sound you hear from them, and then you want to sing songs. It can be very, very small. Just Mary had a little lamb, little phrases, and then play CDs and lots of music and musicals in the home and things where they're getting modeling. But it's going to be more effective from an actual human being that they have a relationship with.
Right.
That mimicking and imitation is really huge. So if you start from there, they make a sound, you make the same sound back. Eventually, you can then flip that mirror and start making sounds and trying to get them to mirror it back to you, almost like a little game.
It would be a natural game,
a natural game that would evolve. And then that's the sort of thing that you would imagine many of our ancestors did intuitively. And we often sort of we're often not as in tune with our intuitive relationship with children in modern.
That's ironic.
World, compared to our ancestors. It was sort of natural what we do, and now we're often seeking a study or research or some sort of backing and data to support it, rather than just going, well, my instincts are telling me to interact with my child this way. And all of my ancestors' instincts also told them to interact with children this way.
Well, and I feel like a lot of times with parents, they don't want to interact musically with their child or follow their instincts because they think, but I'm not trained. I'm not good at this. I don't know how to do this. So you're saying follow your instincts, parents.
Yes, go for it. Just it doesn't matter if you're not very good because you're still better than them. They're an infant who cannot produce any tone. You're somewhere above their level. But it's not that big of a deal if your singing is not perfect as a model for your child, because it's still going to be more effective than just a pre-recording, because they're not interacting with it. It's an object. If it's a CD, if it's a movie, if it's an iPad, it's an object to them. It's not a human being. It's not. It doesn't have agency. It doesn't have spirit. It doesn't have soul to it. When you interact with them, especially as their parent, as someone they love and have a relationship with, they're retaining that a lot more strongly.
Right.
So it comes from the foundation of imitation. If you're just trying to imitate what they do, and they're making a genuine effort to imitate what you're doing, animal sounds are a really great way to start with that. Read a book. Read a story of Old MacDonald had a farm, and just how the cow goes moo.
Right. Moo.
And now my voice is moving up and down. It's moving up and down, and then the sheep goes ba, and now we've got a lower pitch in there, and the cat goes mew mew, and now we've got a higher pitch in there. And even if it's not perfect, if it's not exactly the same pitch, the effort at imitation is building that skill for them.
Well, and again, this is so intuitive. Parents just need to trust. Parents want to make animal sounds with their children.
Yes.
And honestly, it did come from our prehistoric ancestors.
Exactly.
This is just so intuitive.
Yes, it is. It's natural. And so just trust your instincts to interact with the child. We all know. So baby talk is a good example of that. There's a new thing in the last, couple decades of people saying, we shouldn't talk in baby talk to children because you're modeling.
I've heard that.
You're modeling incorrect grammar. And
I've
you should
heard
use
that.
adult language with them all the time. And that way they learn adult language. More or less every parent feels a natural urge to speak like this when they're talking to their little baby.
Absolutely.
And when they're talking to, even a kitten or a puppy, we use that simplified tone. And the first thing that tone does is it demonstrates genuine interest and compassion and goodwill toward them. So we've all seen these sort of videos on YouTube with dogs where you say, who's a terrible little jerk? I hate you so much. And the dog's wagging his tail and smiling
so
the whole time.
happy.
And you say, I love you. You're a perfect little dog. And then they run away scared because they hear the tone. They don't hear the words. And that's true for the children as well. As an infant, when you're pre-verbal, you're not hearing words, you're hearing tone. And so that little baby talk that says, oh, you're such a cute little boy, that tells them that it's a positive interaction with this adult and that adult loves them genuinely. But it's also higher in pitch, which puts it more comfortably in their range to imitate. It's much more melodious. Baby talk moves all the way around. It goes up and down, and it moves all around. It's not just about the infantilization of the vowels and of the sound of the words and of the grammar. It's also about that pitch motion and that light, floaty head voice that gets in there. It's not an aggressive chest tone. So it's a sound that the babies can mimic and model more effectively. It models what their babbling is. It imitates their kind of sound.
Okay, so when we're imitating our infants or toddlers, are there certain melodies or tunes that we should maybe navigate more toward?
Yeah, so there's certainly a large body of repertoire of children's music, obviously.
Sure.
So
good old folk songs.
What I would encourage is to start from what you know. So Kodai has this phrase, the musical mother tongue of the child.
Right.
And the idea is that you start from the musical heritage that the family knows and the children would have been exposed to on their own. So I would say, that musical mother tongue is very complicated in the modern world because what it used to be, you go back several decades or 100 years ago, different cultures and different societies had their sort of body of repertoire, and everybody in that culture knew that music.
Right.
And especially in modern American culture, there's so much variety that there's not sort of a core body of songs that everyone knows.
We are a melting pot.
We are a melting pot. So what I would say is to go for the parent and for the teacher and for the grandparents, for the family, to look at what songs you know and just start from there. And even if there are better songs that musically would have elements in them that lend themselves better to children learning to sing in tune and learning musical skills, I would say the best thing is to start from what you know. Don't go and try to learn 100 new songs right at the start.
Right.
Although, pregnancy is a good time to start learning some songs. I have this running joke because I love dad jokes and puns. I take them a little bit farther than most people. Apparently, not everyone finds them funny. I like to smother people with those dad jokes. But anyway, I have this running joke that because I've loved dad jokes since I was a teenager, and my running joke was I have a 3-step process, and the 3-step process is first learn all the dad jokes, second find a wife, third have a baby, and it seems like it's out of order because you would think you need the dad jokes once you're a dad, but actually once you have a wife and she's pregnant and you have a baby, you have no time to be learning dad jokes. You got to learn these ahead of. If you want to know
need your
them,
repertoire.
you got to be ready. You got to have the repertoire ready to go. So that's where I'm encouraging parents to not try and learn a whole bunch of new songs as you're also trying to be an effective parent. It's just not a great use of your time to dive in and try to get 100 new songs. A few new individual songs, certainly, but take the songs that you already know. And if that's popular music, if that's Broadway music, if it's pop rock, church, hymn tunes, ideally it would be lullabies. What lullabies were sung to you as a child? But not everybody has that, unfortunately. We live in a world where not everybody has those children appropriate songs in their repertoire. So it's okay to start from Michael Jackson. It's okay to start from Aerosmith. It's okay to start from Bob Dylan. That Rolling Stone. It's not the most ideal
lullaby.
Not the most ideal vocal model, but it's better than nothing. And start where you are. Don't make it too complicated at the start. But if you have the time and if you have some interest, it would certainly benefit to go into the children's folk repertoire, particularly things that are pentatonic. And that's a complicated word if you're not familiar with it. But what pentatonic means is a scale that doesn't have half steps in it. So if I sing a solfege scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's that ti, do that's very close. It's only a half step. And do, re, mi, fa, half step. Those little intervals are much harder for young ears to hear effectively and to sing
old ears
effectively.
too.
And for old ears too. It's true. The half steps are the most complicated part. So a pentatonic scale takes out those notes to make it easier to sing. Do, re, mi, sol, la, so, mi, re, do. No fa, no ti, and that takes out the tritone between fa and ti. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It's just a complicated interval.
Harder to sing.
That's harder to sing, exactly. And so what it makes it is that so that all of those notes are relatively easy to sing for the child, and they all sound good when sung together, which is a nice element of it too, that you can just improvise within that structure. And I know that Let's Play goes into that improvisation element as well. That's also common in Kodai and Orff training, as well as improvisation within a pentatonic scale.
Right.
And the start of that is the so-mi interval. So-mi, so-mi, the descending minor third. And what's very interesting about that interval, you can actually go very deep into this. There's a great talk that Leonard Bernstein did years ago that's available on YouTube, where he goes into how the descending minor third appears in nearly all cultures and is universal. But you can observe this from your own life experience. If you are, say you are standing on your porch at night and the street lamps have just gone off and it's time for dinner, and you call to your child, you might say, "Billy, time for dinner. So me. It's a rough minor third shows up when we call naturally. And when children are playing with each other and then maybe one falls down or one is teasing another one and they go, nana, nana, boo, boo, so me, minor third.
There it is again.
It shows up naturally because it is one of, if not the easiest things to sing. It shows up naturally in the voice. It's a small range, so it works well, but it's not so small like those half steps that it's difficult to sing in tune. So most children's music will start from that so me descending third. The Kodai sequence starts there and then adds in the la above. So me, so me, so me, la, so me.
There it
rain,
is.
Rain, go away, come again another day. Whatever the song is, and then slowly expands out to that pentatonic scale, which again is do, re, mi, so, la, so so, mi, re, do.
Right.
Everybody has these basic songs that they can get exposed to. Mary Had a Little Lamb, I'm a Little Teapot. You know, even something like Happy Birthday is a little bit more rangy. It has a little bit more of those trickier intervals in it. But because kids are hearing it all the time, it becomes an effective part of their repertoire.
Right.
It's that repetition and that ability to hear it out in the world and sing it with their friends. You know, so I would say to start from the songs that you know as a parent, as a teacher, as a grandparent, and the songs that your children's friends are likely to know as well. So things like Happy Birthday.
Things that they will hear.
Exactly. Things like Mary Had a Little Lamb. Things like Baba Black Sheep. Things like Three Blind Mice. Or if your culture has different songs that are inherent to it, then expose them to the songs that you know and that your peers would know, so that they can sing song games with their friends, so they can hear those songs in videos that they're watching, or hear them in class when they're going to music classes at school. You know, these core folk songs are really the foundation. And if you're looking for that, you know, the musical terms to look for are pentatonic, and like we said, the descending minor third is the best interval to start from. Just so, mi, na 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 boo boo, you
there
can't
it is.
catch me. Hey Billy, come for dinner. You know, the calling interval. You'll feel it naturally in your voice, and children will generally manifest it on their own.
Right.
You'll see them sort of babble it. Most children will naturally sort of sing songs on their own, just exploratory.
Just sing them to themselves.
I remember once I was with a small child, and it was a brother of a friend of mine who just was sitting in a car and looking out the window and going, trees, 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 trees,
oh.
trees, 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 trees,
it's a beautiful
trees.
song.
And wonderful song. What a beautiful song. And so much minor third in there naturally, because the songs he'd heard were so much full of that kind of music.
My brother's famous song was cow, 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 cow. It was a masterpiece.
It was very moving. Thank you. I apologize if that was cheesy.
Well, your dad jokes are coming out.
Yes, they are. They are legendary.
I like those.
All right.
I love how in so many things that we've said today, there's been a lot about mimicking and connection. And, you know, even in the SOMI, answer back, calling back, it's been something that was already in the person.
Yes.
Something that was already there. And when it manifests, we identify it and then we mimic it. I think that's really an important element.
Yes.
And I think you've even said this before. It is wonderful that we actually call that being in tune.
Yes.
Because when someone mimics you, you feel that this person is in tune with me. This person is feeling what I feel. And this person understands me. And there's a natural connection that happens when we talk about whether we're saying singing in tune, which is technical and musical, or being in tune, which is human and connective. Such great information and such a great experience to be here with Topher. I love your passion. I love your expertise. I love your humanness. And I have loved getting in tune with you today, Topher.
Thank you very much, Shelley. It's been great getting in tune with you as well.
It's been so fun. We hope you'll tune in to our next episode. Bye-bye.